កម្មវិធីកិច្ចសន្ទនាកម្ពុជានិងពិភពលោក
Good evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. Tonight, I have the pleasure to have an academic session, think tank. You probably know already Dr. Chem from the Executive Director of CDI. But we want to focus today more on the Mekong Lancang Cooperation Framework. As you all know, we just have the second leaders meeting recently in Phnom Penh, where Premier Li Keqiang from China came, along with other four leaders of the Mekong country. And there's a lot of activities, a lot of programs, a lot of initiatives that take place. But I thought that tonight we focus more on the academic side, on how Cambodia and other Mekong Lancang countries cooperate at the policy framework level, but also at a practical cooperation level. And I thought of, who else could explain better than from an academic standpoint. And we have CDI, we have, Wata, why don't I give you the floor, you can introduce yourself.
Thank you very much for the opportunities. My name is Wata, I'm the head of economic unit at CDIs. I've been trained as trade economist in Japan for 2 years, and then I come back to work at CDI for 6 years. And then I moved to study international trade law in Barcelona, Spain.
Okay.
For another 1 year. And then I come back to work at CDI. So most of my job is more on international trade. And lately I've been so much engaged in China-related issues, and that's the reason I'm so happy to talk in this show.
All right. But I heard that you're going to leave us in a month or so to go to do your PhD in Australia.
Oh, yes, it's quite a privilege to get the Endeavour Scholarship to study in Australia. And it's at the University of Adelaide.
Yes.
But most importantly, I will be affiliated with the so-called International Trade Center at Adelaide. So hopefully I will more focus on international trade and trade-related issues.
Good. When hopefully when you come back, the ASEAN would have already implemented the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the famous RCEP, right? So you'll be a great asset for CDI, but also for Cambodia as a whole. Maybe a few words from CDI.
Yeah. So good evening again. Thank you for inviting me to your show. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Bhuta. He's quite a senior economist, but this is a great opportunity to go to study further. My name is Dr. Chem. I've been at the CDI as executive director for the last almost going into my 4th year. How time flies.
Yes.
So the economic unit is quite well structured and with good Cambodian researchers there. Actually, currently, beside Bhuta, we have 3 full-time PhD Cambodian researchers in the economic unit.
Yes.
And the diversity is amazing because one got a PhD from Australia,
yes,
the other one from the US, and the other one from Japan. So with this, you have this kind of diversity, not conditioned by only one way to see the world. No?
Speaking of PhD, how many full-time PhD researchers we have at CDI?
Okay, so CDI actually is very special because all our researchers are full-time. You have to be committed to do real deep research. We have 30 researchers, 11 or 12 of them got a PhD. The other third got a master's degree, and we have junior. We coach them about 10.
Yes.
And in general, our researchers at the master level or bachelor level, once they have spent some time with us, they go to compete for scholarship. All of them got a scholarship. And the beauty of the culture of CDI, all of them come back to CDI. Almost all of them.
That's great.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Well, I'm privileged to be chairing CDI board for the last almost 7 years, and I have a few more months before my term ends. But it's such a pleasure to see, at least during my tenure, CDI become Cambodianized. You're Cambodian. All our researchers are Cambodian, well educated, abroad, exposed to the larger part of the world in terms of academic and research. But the beauty is that, like you say, they all come back to serve the country. And in the research side, right? I mean, efficiency matter. When you're from the country, you can move much faster. You go to do baseline survey in Kapong Cham or Kapong Spư in the province. You're cost effective. You see, so I'm very happy.
And you mentioned also the Cambodianization. That we like to break that myth that when Cambodian take over support from foreign assistance, that we're gonna fail.
Yes.
But we have proven otherwise, that Cambodian can lead the organization and Cambodian we can work.
Yes.
And it's been 4 years and we thrive. We have a good funding research thanks to your leadership as a chair also. But this is a historical step for CDI, that it's a Cambodianization as a process, as a mindset, has been quite successful. And
Yes.
thanks to your leadership.
Well, thanks. I think it's a teamwork, but it's always been my ambition that as a research institute that focus on our own country development in the context of the larger global and regional context, it's important that we have our own self-initiated policy consideration, right? But where are we standing in the global ranking? I understand there's a university.
That's a very interesting point. When I came, before I arrived, CDI never compete in this ranking. People argue with ranking, it could be positive, negative, but I think in order to be visible, you have to be on the world map. And there's only one university in the world, UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, that is doing that ranking. It's called Go to Think Tank. And UPenn is one of the US Ivy League, quite respected. And we were stunned the first time that we tried, out of 2,000 think tank across the globe, minus the US because they have more than 1,000, we were ranked 70 and now 75, 76. So top 100 over 2,000. I think we can be very, very proud. And if you have time, go and look at the list of institute above us and below us. You're gonna be shocked to see that how we fare so well in that. And this is that I push my colleague, and then the next 3 to 5 years we should be among the top 50 in the world.
Well, that's a great goal to aim, and I think we're on the right track. And that's explain why under this new Mekong Lancang Cooperation Framework, when we submit the proposal to the government of China, they have considered favorably our role at CDI as one think tank. Perhaps Sota, you can share with us a bit, how do we get the project, what it's all about, and perhaps also, the impact of our contribution.
Okay, we actually get 2 grants from under the Lancang Mekong Cooperation Framework. Each of the grant have the total amount of $500,000. And the first grant is focusing more on the agricultural value chains.
Yes.
It's a type of regional research consortium that we are looking from the 6 Mekong countries. So CDI is the project manager. So there will be a collaboration from other countries. So it means we work on Cambodian China, Laos China, Thailand China, Vietnam China, and also Myanmar China. And the first project is about agricultural value chains. We try to look at what is the situation, the volume of trade on agriculture between each Mekong countries with China. And we also try to explore the challenges, what are the issues along the chains, and how can we resolve all these issues in order to promote the agricultural trade between the Mekong and then China. So the reason that the CDI get the project because we has a lot of experience in managing all these regional consortium. which is for more than 10 years, we get a fund from IDOCs
Yes.
to run all
Of
the
Canada.
Of Canada's, and it's above the Greater Mekong Region regional network, research network, I think, GMNet. So we are so much experienced in all managing all this regional research consortium. And then we apply for the grant, and then we get it. And the project not only has the research component, we also have the dialogue, policy dialogue components. So our aim is to get the research finding, and then we gather the key relevant stakeholders to discuss this is the research funding and what would be the policy implication. And that is project number one.
Well, let me stop on project number one. I'm glad that you have this policy component, policy dialogue component, because ultimately is how the six country can benefit from each other learning curve. I mean,
That's right.
you know, we're all a agriculture-driven country, really, for the Mekong River, right? Of course, China, they have the agriculture, but they have other things. But in this context, how do you see, are there any area where different countries sort of excel or have a more competitive advantage in certain agricultural product or something like this?
Well, this is the beauty of having the regional and comparative study. We look at each country, Mekong country, agricultural strengths and weaknesses, and how they interact with China and how they benefit from it. So, of course, every country has their own advantages, and somehow is so much similar and competitive with each other. But yet there is again the room where each country can benefit from the growth of China. China is growing so rapidly, and then it will be the big market for each Mekong country to supply agricultural goods.
Okay.
So the fact that we initially designed a regional project that composed of each Mekong country with China's, partly because we want to learn from each country experience and competitiveness, and how can each country get the maximum benefit from all.
Good. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, until we look a bit how the strength of CDI in the area of policy and dialogue, and how we can really take a good leadership role in the sub-region. So we'll take a short break. Well, would I have sort of give a context a bit on the first project? We'll talk about the second one later, but from the policy dialogue perspective, CDI have really a competitive advantage is that we do a lot of this sort of policy dialogue, right? What any other area that CDI have done, particularly in the area of policy dialogue? I think every year we do the Outlook conference. That's another area that we did well.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. Because actually, when I came, we discussed with the board that CDI should be a think tank for Cambodia, but should look beyond that. And the last 2 years, I think we thrived. We did a lot of interaction, networking. We are in a circles of network that overlap each other. I will name a few of them. The Asian Think Tank Network, funded by IDB. The South Asian think tank, funded by IDRC, the International Development Research Center of Canada. East Asian think tank, Korea, Japan, and China. And 2 years ago, we're very proud. We have been invited to be a founding member of the Global Silk Road think tank network. So with this, we are in interaction with many think tanks, talking a lot. So policy dialogue is our forte. We're used to that. And as Wata mentioned rightly, we were running this, coordinating that grant with IDRC over at least 10 years. Right? So we're not just part of that regional think tank network. We are coordinating, we are leading this. So a lot of experience in doing that. And with this, we make a name in the region, and we are invited at think tank network, even from tattoo diplomacy, non-traditional security. So we see that actually we are very prepared for that. And with the China initiative, Belt and Road coming in also, I foresee a lot of more expansion of our role because many think tanks from Europe, from Germany, from Sweden, from the US, from China, when they come to CDI to consult us.
Well, we'll get to the Belt and Road later on, but I want to shift back to Vutta a bit on the second project. What's the second project is all about? Regional dimension, right?
The second project have similar modality as the first projects, in the sense that we have the research component and then also the policy dialogue component, also the regional research consortium. Yet the difference is the second project focus more on the issue on contract farming. It's important because contract farming works in one country, but it seems doesn't work in another countries. So our idea is to try to understand what can we learn from each country practice and regulatory framework and how can be improved in the contract farming. And that again is a comparative study, Cambodian contract farming practice and modality, Thailand, Laos, Myanmar and China. And then at the end of the day, we're going to compile and synthesize the regional contract farming practice and modality and how work best and how not work best.
But in Cambodia, we do have quite a bit of a contract farming model, right? Some work, some doesn't work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet, I think we are absent of the contract farming law, which is supposed to regulate all the contract farming practice and solve the kind of issues. It works if the price doesn't change much, because it's a kind of pre-arrangement that the farmer and then the supplier come to agreement at the specified amount of quantities and then also price. It works because if the price is quite stable, everyone can accept all the price, it's okay. But if the price fluctuates so much, farmer can change their mind, and then there is no other mechanism that the supplier can deal with all this contract breaching. And that is the challenge.
That's a challenge. I think I remember way back when I was in Ministry of Commerce, where the first contract farming was with the British American Tobacco, Kapong Cham, Jahai, Coston, and that's a good case where it worked, where you have a credible company, irrespective of the commodity that they grow. But look, cigarette people smoke, right? I'm not in favor of cigarette, but along the Mekong River for hundreds of years are people along the Mekong River in Yahai, Kapong Cham, Coston, they've been growing tobacco, right? It's a farming livelihood stuff, right? But I would say that a few years later, when I meet with them, they are able to send their kid to study in Phnom Penh, because the company is very good. They care, they have a good system, a payment system, advance system, capacity building aspect, that sort of thing, right? So, but from what you say, there's a legal issue involved there, right? And from that project, you hope that we can learn from other experience from Thailand and other Mekong countries,
Yeah, of course. We look from different dimensions. Most important is regulatory, whether there's existing regulatory framework that regulate all the contract farming. Second, we will take stock all the existing kind of contract farming from many years ago and why they work and why doesn't work. Is it work because does different commodity contract farming differ or something that has common factor that contribute to the success of contract farming? So within the case study, country specific case study, we look all different issue and dimension and also factors. The other country might look the same, and then when we come up with different comparative study, we can also extract some good lesson learned from each other.
Yeah. I think rice is there's been some good success and not so successful model. Cassava lately has been pretty much entering that contract farming model. So I'm quite keen to see this outcome, because I think for a study frame under a sub-regional context, it's quite interesting because we sure can learn from what the neighbor does.
That's right. This is something we learned from the GMSnet. The usefulness and the importance of having regional, each country comparative case study together, and then we come up with a very useful synthesis report that extract all the key country-specific issue and strength, and then the comparative and lesson learned.
Very good, very good. Well, so I'm glad CDI has been able to tap this resource from the Mekong Lancang Cooperation Framework, and I look forward to see the outcome. And hopefully, when the outcome come, I can invite you back. Oh, but then you'll be in Australia already, so whoever replaces you will have to come and present the finding, right?
But he's going to be back with more knowledge.
All right, that's great. That's great. So, Bung Thi, back to what you mentioned earlier, the Belt and Road, Mekong Lancang. To me, is more like Mekong Lancang is more like a subset, a pillar, a sub-regional pillar of the larger grand scheme of the Belt and Road initiative that President Xi Jinping launched way back in 2013, right?
13,
yeah. But CDI is part of this think tank network. How are you doing there?
Look, well, I arrived at the right time. I started in 2014. The Belt and Road was launched with a statement of vision from President Xi Jinping in Kazakhstan and Indonesia.
Yes.
And with this, we immediately foresee that there was something that is needed, is a policy dialogue.
Yes.
Because great vision from great leaders at the top.
Yes.
But how can you translate that into a strategy and an action plan? So we will prepare ourselves that we should do something. And in the meantime, thanks to our partners in China and in the region, there were so many seminar forum on Belt and Road. Actually, we got invited almost every other month to the point that we have to be more selective. So my strategy is that number one is important. We cannot ignore the new diplomacy of China.
Yes.
There's a lot of thinking around the world, pro and con, but we are a policy research center. We don't argue with that.
Evidence-based.
Yeah, they come, we look for evidence.
Yeah.
And if you want evidence, you need to engage, to work with in the field there. So my first strategy is to interact. I travel a lot. At the beginning, my colleagues, why are you traveling? If you don't travel, there's no regional research project. So by going to China, going to the region, getting input, we build that network. And my trick is that I rotate all the senior researchers. All of them will go one by one. But you cannot just read from the press.
Yes.
Or read from analysis from academic paper. You need to go there and feel. You know? When you go to the western part of China or Fujian province to look at the origin of the Silk Road, you feel that special economic zone, the dry port, there's something really happening. And all this, the Mekong Lancang just come in, you know. But we're not new to the Mekong because we work with the GMS net,
yes.
Greater Mekong sub-region. And allow me to look back a little bit, 150 years ago. That's very interesting, you know. I'm a historian, I always like to look back a bit. Exactly 150 years ago, there was the French Navy launched a Mekong Exploration Commission. 1866-68. So exactly 150 years ago, France by that time was quite powerful, colonial power.
Sure.
They go and colonize continents, and the French Navy has problem targeting China or India because it's close by the British. So the idea was to get through the Mekong from the south, going up to China, and until they met with the Cone, the falls.
Yeah, the Cone Fall. Yeah.
And the two French, one I think is name is Dudar de la Grey, the other one is Francis Garnier, were part of that expedition. So by that time, if you look at the geopolitics, we have no say here. We're Asian. We just wait the West was controlling, the British, the French, and all the others, colonial power. But now, 150 years ago later, you look at the Mekong Lancang is a business among Asian nations here, China and all the riparian countries. And this is just a change of that world order. It's very interesting, but this comes with opportunity for working together. There's nothing better than dialogue. You know, we both of us, we belong to the UN as a senior diplomat for many years. That dialogue is the best way to build peace.
Yes.
It's not posturing. So certainly the core interest of each country has to be respected. But when you have a river that no borders crossing 5-6 countries, there's a need for dialogue.
Yes, yeah.
And CDI is participating actively. We organize also platform to allow all this colleague and partner through the think tank to come and dialogue and doing a kind of track to diplomacy also. So it's very exciting time. So CDI is ready for that.
Yes. Well, we're going to take one last break, and when we come back, I want to continue this discussion more on the larger dynamics of the Mekong sub-region. You know, some people talk about watershed, some people talk about power shed.
Yes.
This would be interesting to have a good discussion. Okay, so you know, on the Mekong Lancang framework itself, we, you know, from some people perspective, they say, well, it's a lot of opportunity to work together, but others say, but there's a lot of challenge because these are cross-boundary issue. You know, there's a lot of I say dam being built, water management, agriculture. All these are opportunity and challenge, right? Some people mention that the Great Mekong sub-region is a big watershed. To some other people, they say, but it's a power shed because all this hydro are generating, you know, power, energy, you know, that drive economy. What do you think of that?
Look, first I'm thinking as a biologist.
Yes.
If you look at the river from China down to Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and go down, there's a kind of a food chain, you know.
Yeah, it's a food chain.
It's a kind of food chain, if I can dare to use that metaphor.
Yeah.
That the one at the highest level has the privilege to have pure water from the Himalaya.
Yeah.
And once you start to have those dams, you don't need to have a PhD to understand there will be impact of people who are below,
downstream.
Downstream.
Yeah.
So downstream. So with this here, if you wish to get a kind of fair share and avoid this kind of double standard that have been imposed on a small country like us, we need a dialogue.
Yeah.
We need dialogue. We need leadership at all levels. And I believe that this is an opportunity to relook, particularly at the change of the world order here. Just look back after the Second World War, non-aligned movement, the Seattle, ASEAN that came, a lot of changes in the dynamics of relation between countries. And before, China was very poor, now China is very rich. I don't say that it's better, but when you have money, there will be a lot of initiatives. And when the country that has a lot of money bring initiative, country that has less is annoyed.
Yes.
So all of this, the most important is what is the core interest in Cambodia.
Yeah.
We are really at the lower of the food chain here. The impact on environment is quite worrisome. Impact on livelihood. So all these are new, and with the economic development, all these countries are developing country, with certainly a different of GDP level yet.
Yeah.
But one is more vulnerable than others. Cambodia, of all the countries, suffer the most because of tragedy the last for 50 years, 30 years, the Khmer rule, the genocide. So it's not too bad that we succeed to now. Phnom Penh was a ghost country. Look at how we thrive now. So how can we manage to get the most out of the Mekong by negotiating, by dialoguing with partners in the region?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you may have project, but you need investment in many things. And you're an expert. I don't explain that. But so a lot of opportunity for policy research and policy dialogue for CDI in the future.
Well, I mean, Cambodia for many years since when we have the peace in the early 90s, the biggest impediment is the high price of our electricity, right? That's what makes us so uncompetitive. And the Japanese, they're big industrialists. When they come, they say your labor wage is very reasonable, but it's hard for us to relocate now because your electricity rate is so high, and the saving we save from the cheap labor, we all end up paying to your, they say, electricity to Cambodia. But the latest dam, the Sesan, right? The Sesan, Lower Sesan, that was recently commissioned a few months ago, 400 megawatt of electricity. It does bring a certain, what I call, energy security to the country as well. Because as a country, you have political security, in the physical sense, security, armed security, sort of thing. But don't forget, your sovereignty depends a lot on your ability to have an energy security as well. And to me, when you don't have that security, the energy security, you are rely on the neighbor, right? But sometimes it's not that the neighbor don't want to sell, but they also have their own need. If we buy from Vietnam, we buy from Thailand. If Thailand and Vietnam economic development keep growing, it makes sense that they will reallocate their energy to their, industrial park first,
Naturally,
right? Naturally. So I think we're talking about the issue of energy. Look at Laos. You look at the satellite map of Laos. It's all mountain. There's a few valley, and that's where Vientiane, that's where Pak Se, that's where Luang Prabang is. But the rest all mountain, landlocked. How in the world they gonna find a source of growth, right? And so I think it's more complex than than we can just say, well, building a dam is not good or this and that. It requires a lot of consultation, and at the end of the day, right? It's a platform where the lower stream country can raise the issue, and the upper stream country would have to be magnanimous in one way, but at the same time scientifically. Like you say, emotion don't go anywhere.
No.
It's scientific.
This point here, I always say that if in order to have a sound policy, you need to have a sound scientific, solid evidence.
Yes.
But once you get the sound scientific evidence, it's necessary but not sufficient to have a sound policy, because policymakers make decisions based on other criteria.
Yes.
Politics, economics, strategic.
Yeah.
But if you have no sound scientific evidence, there will never be a sound policy. And that's the reason why I work at the International Atomic Energy Agency. Sometimes I clash with policymakers. We work here. We always say that, and my colleagues sometimes here and in Vienna, they say, we found this scientific result, but actually they never use, or they don't use differently. What is the purpose of our work? I told them, no, quality of science, you justify the check of your salary at the end of the month. So the output is the responsibility of researcher. Clear, solid research methodology, full-time researcher, no amateurish, very scientific. Once you get that, it's a clear paper for any government, and the decision is not in our hand, it's in the government, but at least the government will have solid scientific evidence. Decision making must be made first on scientific evidence, and the rest other consideration certainly are welcome.
And this is where I see the beauty of having this dialogue mechanism, because different country is setting up their own water resource institute. China has already, we have also ours, and that's where the 6 country can exchange data. If we expect that this year, with the El Nino, whatever, you expect more drought, right? Expect that the dry season is going to be harsh. That's with this data, with this forecast, we can dialogue, inform, establish communication line to say, look, release more water for that, right? Because in a way, if you manage this data exchange well, it can be very positive, you know, because sometimes flood is helpful, sometimes flood is not helpful. You know, so
and think tank has a role, you know, because in a regional forum or fora, when you meet, sometimes there's a tension, there's strategic thinking, and it's blocked the dialogue.
Yes.
But scientists, we can talk. Even if politicians don't talk to each other, scientists will talk across the borders. And so the arbitration at the scientific level is wonderful. We have an easy job because we just argue on any corner. We don't leave any stone unturned. And there's a beauty of academics and the think tank. But once we get that, it's clear and clear evidence. We give it to the politician, policymaker, and then you to negotiate for the best interests of the core interests of the country.
So this is great. Uta, I mean, of course you'll be leaving very soon, but I think whoever gonna take on fill your shoes, who have to start thinking on a future project that CDI can play, can provide intellectual contribution in area of, say for example, agriculture, but linked to water management, for example. You know, agriculture, but still linked to irrigation, for example. And how is the impact on the various level of water flow, for example? I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure, you know, there's we can think of linkage, you know, even a further nexus to food security, you know, water security, energy security, all linked to poverty reduction, for example, you know?
Yeah, I think we as a think tank, we welcome the rise of China's and then the implication of China development for the region and for each countries. And from research, there's a lot of research team that related to China and then individual country kind of core interests. And that's the reason CDI, we create or establish the China Resource Centers, where there will be the place for any of China-related books, journal articles, and other related China's resource, where the public can access, number one. Number two, China Resource Center will create the so-called the dialogue platform, what we call Cambodian-China Research and Policy Dialogues. It's a regular platform for which all the research, scholar, and policy come and talk on different themes on Cambodia and China. This is at the country Cambodian-China country bilateral level. And last year we organized, on December last year, we have the first dialogue. And the theme is on higher education cooperation between Cambodia and China in the context of Belt and Road.
Okay.
So I think we established some foundation facilities and the forum already. I hope our research at CDI will kick off and continues all the China-related research studies. And the two Lancang Mekong research projects will under the umbrella of the China Resource Centers. CDI is in a very better and advanced position to generate and to lead all the research related to China and the region, and then make a policy dialogue for the sake of the whole country's interest.
Good. Well, we're running out of time, Mong. What is your last view of it? On the Mekong Lancang Cooperation?
The Mekong Lancang is a big project with real fundings. And it's a unique opportunity. We don't see that as a threat, but as an opportunity to do more research. I have to confess at this point we don't know much because it's a new order in this region. That's number one. Number two, he mentioned a China Resource Center that we're going to launch in 2 months at CDRI. We did it simply because there is no China specialist in Cambodia. At CDRI, our researcher got their PhD from Japan, from Australia, from the US, from Netherlands, from Germany. But there's nobody with a PhD from China. And a scholar with a PhD from the US, we write differently on China than a scholar from China. We need that diversity. I didn't mean that one is better than the other, but there's no better place than to have that diversity of scholars with a different background. So my next challenge is to build that center in order to get to understand what the meaning of a China new diplomacy, this new movement, we cannot ignore. When you live so far away, it's okay, but in Cambodia, we can't ignore that, and we should not ignore that at our own cost. So, if you see a rise of a superpower coming economically and politically, we rather be ready to look scientifically and what would be the implication on Cambodia, because at the end of the day we want to benefit from these new challenges, this new opportunity, but also in order to benefit, to absorb from this new flow of investment, we have our responsibility to be up to the level to understand, to negotiate for the best interest of our country also.
Great. Well, I think we, not bad for a short discussion. We have a good overview what the CDI is going to do in the context of the Mekong Lancang Cooperation Framework. And Monty, we also have a great opportunity to share with you a bit on this geopolitical, evolution, how power rise, power decline, and how it affects small country like us, But I would say that the Mekong Lancang Cooperation Framework, as new as it is filling the void in many different ways, in terms of policy, in terms of leadership in the region, for example, and I think as a sovereign nation, we will always have our own independence, our own sovereignty, our own say in that. But it's good to be in a position to dialogue with neighboring country as a peer, not as a small country or big country, and that's probably the spirit of the Mekong Lancang, is that this mutuality, this reciprocity,
symmetrical
communication, this mutual respect, that sort of thing, and ultimately it's a consensus base, right? And I think I can even say it's a new model of a South-South cooperation as well, right? And in the context of when you speak of South-South cooperation, one always have to refer to the larger global context of the UN 2030 Development Agenda, Sustainable Development Agenda. So I think, yes, the Mekong Lancang Cooperation Framework has its place under the sun, as much as the GMS, as much as the CLMV, as much as AMBDC, that sort of thing. But let's make sure that Cambodia ride on this new platform and bring some benefit for the country. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much, and good luck for your PhD study.
Thank you.
Yeah, Monty, a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the program, and I just wrap up already. So I want to say good night. Nothing else to say.